So for today's video, I'm going to be covering the Legends stage of the Eleague Major. Of course, I did have my predictions for the Challenger stage in the previous video on my channel. I can put the link below if anyone wants to watch that. But we are now into the top 16. Of course, there was 9 teams that made it from the Challenger stage because of the 100 Thieves visa or passport issues of some kind that have not really been talked about too much, I know, but we will nevertheless be continuing on with 16 teams because they have added the play-in game between a Vanguard and Team Liquid, which of course Team Liquid did win in overtime by a final score of 19-15, I believe. So we will be starting from the top. Of course, I talked about most of the Challenger teams in the last video, but again, I will cover most of them in this video. So to start off, we have Gambit Esports, who, you know, at this point now, we are talking about, can this team win a major, right? Like, I can give my predictions for each team on how far they'll finish, but at this point, it's very centered around, can they win a major, or will they get out of, will they get out of this Swiss system? So, Gambit Esports is kind of a hard team to start off with, because they're kind of a bubble team for me. Ever since the last major, Zeus obviously went back to Na'Vi. We kind of found out that Zeus didn't mean as much to Gambit as many people had predicted. Gambit has actually been able to put up good performances despite him leaving, which is fairly enlightening if you are a Gambit fan, knowing that this kind of core from Kazakhstan can in fact, hang with the best competition in the world in some cases, and they should be able to make top 8. I would assume that they will make top 8, but again, they're very much a bubble team for me, and we'll see how it goes. Of course, there's always going to be upsets, as we saw in the Challenger stage, and more likely than not, because this system does not have any sort of seeding, 2 bad teams will more likely than not play each other at some point. That will be a determining factor to one of those poor teams making top 8. So we will see what happens with Gambit. But for me right now, looking at the teams very quickly, I'll say that they will not make it through to the group stage. So I will predict them not to be in the top 8 and move forward into the playoff bracket. The next team, I'll mention as well, Gambit's first round matchup is with Na'Vi. So Astralis is the second team, and they have a match against Mouse Sports in the first round. And this Astralis team, of course, it was announced that Device is going to play in the major, which immediately elevates Astralis because, one, they don't have to use Zonic now, of course, their coach, and 2, because Device is just a really good player, obviously. He's probably the best player in Denmark, one of the best oppers in the world for sure when he's on. So he certainly elevates this team, and I don't really see a way in which they don't make it to top 8 unless there is a case where Device tries to play and then says, I just can't do this, like my wrist hurts too bad, or whatever, and they do have to end up using Zonic. Then maybe that does happen, but I think Device is kind of all in on this one. It seems like he announced it, 2 weeks ago, that he was officially going to play, which kind of leads me to believe that he, took the time to think and decided that he was going to push himself for that 2 weeks to prepare and, be ready for the major. So Astralis, I'm going to predict top 8. to make it out of this group, or to make it out of the Swiss system, excuse me. So the next team is Virtus Pro, and Virtus Pro is kind of another bubble team for me, like Gambit. And the thing with Virtus Pro is, obviously they were so bad in most of 2017, or basically from the Eleague Atlanta Major, which was the end of January, I believe, to all the way up until that tournament that they got second place in against SK. Was that New York? No, New York was the NIP tournament. Or no, Oakland was the NIP tournament. I don't remember what event it was, honestly, but point is, they are in a position where it's hard to say with Virtus Pro, because they have shown us nothing to say that they should make it and be a top 8 team. But Virtus Pro seems to always overperform at majors, and more than that, their last tournament, although it was, a couple months ago now, they did show a fairly good performance, which honestly leads me to believe that they will be a pretty good team at this event. But they're obviously the biggest bubble team going forward. But for the sake of predictions, I mean, if I look at the list, there's like 6 or 7 teams that I'm like about 80 or 90% sure that will make it. So Virtus Pro for me is right up there with Gambit, but for the sake of predictions, I'll say that Virtus Pro will make it. I think they probably are a little bit better than Gambit, just based on the last performance we saw from them. Obviously, we haven't really seen too much from Gambit recently either, so those teams are especially kind of tough to call as bubble teams, because we just don't really know what exactly type of performance we're going to get from either of those teams. So I'll predict Virtus Pro in my top 8. And then moving on, we have Fnatic. And Fnatic is a team for me where they're just still trying to figure things out with this lineup. I mean, Golden has shown some signs of being a potentially good in-game leader. They've had some good individual performances in tournaments, but they haven't really put it together at an entire tournament, at least not like a major one for me yet, or not necessarily a major tournament, but a premier tournament of some kind, like the ESL Pro League LAN, or IEM Oakland, tournaments like that, bigger tournaments of the year. They haven't put it together for me. I know they have good players. A lot of their players have been in majors before, have played in pretty much all of them, but especially when you start off against FaZe, I don't know that this team has it to make top 8. For me, they're not better than Virtus Pro and Gambit, and if I can't put them over those two teams, then I don't really see a way in which I can put them into the top 8. So Fnatic, I'll say, is not going to make top 8. And of course, like I said, they play FaZe, and then I don't remember if I said this, but Virtus Pro's first match is against Quantum Bellator Fire, so they should, start off the tournament pretty well. Moving on to the 5th team, SK Gaming. This one is pretty easy for me. SK Gaming is, in my opinion, the best team going into the tournament. I know they are playing with a stand-in in Phelps instead of Bolts, but I mean, we've seen SK Gaming perform well with pretty much every iteration of the lineup, every iteration of their lineup, since they were Luminosity at MLG Columbus, since they won that event. They've seemed to be one of the best teams, if not the best overall team in the world since that event, or basically since 2015. So for me, SK Gaming, like I said, clear number 1. in my opinion, coming into the tournament, despite having to use a stand-in. And of course, no discredit to Phelps. He's a great player individually, which is, again, why they are being held in such high regard. So SK Gaming, obviously I'm going to predict them to make it out. They play a first match against Space Soldiers. And yeah, they should be just fine against Space Soldiers. Of course, Space Soldiers did beat them at ESL 1 Cologne, but it's a one-time performance I'm not going to really buy into realistically. So moving on, we have Big, and their first match is against Team Liquid. And Big, for me, we haven't really seen them at any major tournaments recently. Really, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but realistically, I don't think I've seen them play at a high level or at a at least moderate to adequate level to say that they should make the major. I mean, really, since their last performance in the major, I don't know that I've seen them, perform at the regard I would hold the top 8 to at this major. So Big for me, I'm not going to put them in the top 8. Tabson is a really good player. Gob B is a really good in-game leader, but besides that, I'm not really sure what they have. And I'm not really sure that they have what it takes to be one of the top 8 teams at the major. So I will predict them not in the top 8. So moving on, we have North, and they're playing Vega Squadron. And North, for me, should make it top 8. On paper, they've always been one of the best teams. They've had very bad inconsistency issues or underperformance issues. And since they've added Valda, it's been a lot better. But it'll be interesting to see if they can keep playing well. They're going to be going up against a Vega Squadron team in the first round who kind of surprised me in the challenger stage, because the thing with Vega Squadron is that, and I'll get into this more when I cover their team, but the thing with Vega Squadron is that I didn't really think that they had it to be able to kind of repeat their top 16 or, repeat their performance to get into the legend stage of the major. But they performed very well in the challenger stage, and I do want to give them credit because, like I said, they performed very well, and they definitely deserve more credit than I gave them in the challenger stage video that I did for this major. So North, I'll just cut to the chase. I think North will make top 8. They shouldn't have too much of a problem. I think they should be good to go. Even if they do lose that game to Vega Squadron to start, I mean, I can easily see North going 3-2 and making it out, just depending on who they play. But for now, I will say North will make top 8. And then we've got Cloud9, who is the first challenger stage team. And they perform very well. I mean, Cloud9 is the American representative. NA's hope and dreams lie in the fate of Cloud9. And for me, they will make top 8 for sure, unless they do have some sort of underperformance. But I think Cloud9 is in a position where they should make top 8. They probably will, but I don't know if I'd be surprised if they didn't, because there are some very good teams. There's about 10 teams, realistically, for me, that can probably make top 8 in this tournament. And Cloud9 could be on the outside looking in, but, I'd give that about off the top of my head, like a 22% chance that they don't make top 8. So, if you can't tell, I'm going to be taking Cloud9 in my top 8. And all of America will put their hopes and dreams into this young skill-based roster that has shown some good performances. And hopefully they just get the consistency that they need from Skadoodle, because if they don't, then realistically they won't get very far in this tournament. And Skadoodle has had some really good events this year, or in the past year, and some really bad events. So you hope he can have a good one and they can make it out. Their first round matchup, and the team I'm covering next, is G2. G2, maybe the only team besides North to have more, they're probably the most inconsistent team besides North is what I'm trying to say. And I mean, this is a team that on paper should be top 4 easily every tournament, in my opinion. And they haven't really shown us, again, the consistency for me to put them in as a top 4 team. So for me, G2 will make top 8. I don't think there's a way that they don't. That being said, I said that for the Krakow Major. I didn't think there was a way that they didn't make it, and they didn't make it. So we shall see what happens with them. But I don't think inconsistencies will strike them enough in this tournament to force them out. I think they should be able to make top 8, so I will take them in my top 8 as well. Moving on to FaZe Clan. FaZe Clan plays Fnatic. FaZe Clan is probably the favorites to win. And I realized earlier I said SK are the favorites to win, but because of the stand-in, I actually probably would take FaZe over SK. FaZe is so good, and SK, like I said before, with stand-ins, they've still been amazing as a team. Fallen's ability to just kind of bring in anyone to play kind of a filler role is almost unmatched. Besides maybe Glaive for Astralis, obviously they had that tournament with Dennis. But yeah, FaZe Clan for me, probably the favorite going into the event versus SK, who I predicted to win the event, like I said. So FaZe Clan, they will make top 8. Obviously, don't really need to say too much more about them. So let me see. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so I've predicted 7 teams, I believe, so far. Yeah, so I predicted 7 teams. So basically, the way I look at it now is I've got 1 spot left for Space Soldiers, Vega Squadron, Mouse Sports, Quantum Bellator Fire, and Team Liquid. And off the top of my head, I want to say Na'Vi because, see, Team Liquid got the best round 1 matchup for me that they could have gotten because, of course, they drew Big, who they should be able to beat. But they do have a coach as a stand-in, which makes me worry a little bit. And, of course, they did have to play in that kind of last chance qualifier to even make it to this point. So I'm going to predict that Na'Vi is the team that makes it out. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I think what we saw from Simple in that sort of in that decisive game against Team Liquid is the Simple we're going to see at this major. The put the team on my back Simple, he goes 31-10 in that game against Liquid, and I don't think that, like, based on the teams that I've talked about putting at number 8, like, if you look at all those teams, realistically, the only other team I'd put as giving a chance to is Mouse Sports because of how individually skilled all those players are. I mean, realistically, for me, Mouse Sports is kind of like purified FPL team is what I'll call them. I mean, they just have all the skill. Their tactics are fairly weak, but they know how to use their skill effectively in most cases and can do very well. But the main thing for Mouse Sports is that they have a first round match against Astralis, which means they're basically starting out this tournament 0-1 right off the bat, barring some sort of upset that I do not foresee. So, yeah, Space Soldiers and Mouse Sports and Na'Vi are kind of the three teams I'm looking at that could be in that one spot. Gambit, of course, is a team that I said earlier I left out. And they're the fourth team that could also kind of make it in there. But between those four teams of Na'Vi, Mouse Sports, Space Soldiers, and Gambit, I'm leaning towards Na'Vi. If I'm gonna, all right, here's what I'll do. I'll put them in order of probability, in my opinion. So we've got, for me, 1 Na'Vi, 2 Gambit, 3 Mouse Sports, 4 Space Soldiers. So, again, I'll go through my overall top 8 now, that I've kind of, laid them all out. So we've got Astralis, Virtus Pro, SK, North, Cloud9, G2, FaZe, and Na'Vi. So those are the 8 teams that I believe will make it to the Legends stage of Eleague. Of course, once this Swiss system is over and we begin the playoffs, I'll have a video before the playoffs doing my predictions for the playoff bracket. If you did enjoy this video, please leave a like and subscribe. Share this on Reddit. Share this with all your friends. Share it with your pets, your mom, your dad, your grandma. I don't know who else. You know who to share it with. You know who the esports fans are that you interact with on a daily basis. But for now, I'm going to leave this video and hopefully see you for the next one.